Yeah, that's not a real photo because I only have two arms. You just generated that. Nope, I'm pretty sure I know how many arms I have. Oh, hey there. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett. If you've never listened to the show before, welcome. Be sure to subscribe. It only takes a few seconds. And if you want to go back and catch up on past episodes, and there are a lot of good ones, episodes 25, 79, and 105 are great starting points depending on how far back you want to go. In addition to providing entertaining and informative photography-related info, I also go on adventures with the crew of the starship Fibonacci. Right now, I'm working with some droids who are teaching photography to the residents of Obscurus 7. They have the technical aspects down, but just like you'd expect from AI, they don't quite have a grasp on the independent artistic vision. Hey, it's why I'm here to teach you. Speaking of teaching photography, in this episode, I speak with Ilie Mitaru, whose documentary, First Frames, follows a photographer named Serbest Salih as he teaches photography to children living in refugee camps. It's a really powerful story, and you don't want to miss it. All that after the break. That's just another variation of what you showed me before. Tired of juggling multiple programs to get the perfect look? Say hello to On1 Photo Raw, the ultimate photo editing software built by photographers for photographers. It's fast, powerful, and packed with tools. From precision masking to AI-powered enhancement, On1 Photo Raw gives you complete creative control without the subscription headaches. Edit raw files with ease, retouch like a pro, and bring your vision to life with stunning effects, all in one intuitive platform. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, On1 Photo Raw helps your photos stand out and your workflow stay smooth. Ready to upgrade your editing game? Download a free trial. Just go to nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/on1. That's nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/on1 and start creating without limits. Use our link and the discount code NERDYPHOTO20. That's NERDYPHOTO20 and save 20% off if you decide to purchase or subscribe to On1 software. On1 Photo Raw, powerful, creative, yours. Hey photographers, imagine losing every photo, project, or document in a single crash. Scary, right? That's why there's Backblaze, the simple, reliable, and automatic way to back up your important data and photos to the cloud. Photographers, creatives, and everyday users, Backblaze protects what matters most with unlimited backup and easy recovery whenever you need it. I use Backblaze as part of my workflow to back up my most recent shoots until they're delivered to my clients, my most important business photos and documents as well, and all of my personal photos and videos. It's just $9 a month or $99 a year for unlimited data backup from one computer with 1 year version history and access to your data from anywhere. Crashes happen. With Backblaze, your files are safe, secure, and just a click away. Start your backup today at nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/backblaze or click the link in the episode notes because peace of mind is priceless. That's nerdyphotographer.com/backblaze because you never know when a crash is going to happen. Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and I'm here today with Ilie Mitaru, who is a photojournalist and documentarian director. Ilie, thank you very much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Casey.
And before we get started, I'm going to roll the dice breaker. It's a 2. Okay, what is the worst photography advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, I think luckily I've probably tuned most of that stuff out. I do think that there tends to be, especially if you follow a lot of photo accounts on Instagram, there tends to be a focus on gear. And I think that we're in this day and age, and I'm sure your listeners sort of relate to this, where all the gear out there now is good enough if you're going, especially if you're getting started. And so I think a lot of the times I've tried to help friends get into the photo world, and they're so focused on gear and what the cameras and lenses can do. And I always say, like, creatively, there's so much ceiling with what all these cameras can do now. Just get anything and start photographing. So
I,
that's I guess how I would answer that one.
I think it's, I mean, I think that answer is super poignant to what we're talking about today, because we're
Hmm.
talking about this documentary that you filmed called First Frames. And I don't know if you want to kind of break it down a little bit for people, like what the story of this documentary is.
Yeah, so First Frames follows a mobile darkroom project that was working initially on the Syrian-Turkish border. It was bringing analog photography to refugee children along the border, and in bringing this arts sort of campaign to them, was also working on promoting issues of access to education, especially access to education for young girls in these communities, which doesn't exist in many of them. They were working on integration between different communities that would live in the same village. So there might be a Kurdish population, a Christian population, a Syrian population, and a Turkish population, all living within this small village, but quite sort of unintegrated and quite suspicious of one another. So the workshop would come, and Serbest, who runs the workshop, would be very um, sort of conscientious about integrating kids and pairing up kids from different communities, from different families that hopefully then would continue those friendships and start to build some level of integration in some of these communities. The first third of our film focuses on one of these communities. And then what happens is that the earthquake takes place, and the second two-thirds of the film shift towards communities that have been very severely impacted by the earthquake. So then the photo program, which is in essence a mobile darkroom. You can think of it like a little Airstream trailer that Serbest has built out to develop 35 millimeter film. He's going to these communities, and it basically is an opportunity for these kids. Well, I would say first and foremost to think about something else besides the earthquake, to have a break in some of the monotony that they've been dealing with. And secondly, I think it's a sort of the film in sort of its totality tries to focus on what that childlike experience is and tries to give you a sense of what it's like to be exposed to a new art form, in this case analog photography, for the first time. So while it's obviously kind of context specific, we are trying to touch on sort of universal themes of, art, beauty, experimentation, things that maybe if we're as adults having the conversation, they feel a little bit cliche or trite, but the film focuses almost exclusively around the children. It uses children's video and photos, and it almost exclusively is just narrated by them, and really kind of embraces the sort of magical, nonsensical, but and for me, really kind of disarming and insightful narratives of the children.
Well, Ilya, I gotta say, I watched this twice, and I mean, it emotionally and thoughtfully, like, really hit me pretty hard. These kids, it's like everything that they've gone through
Mm-hmm.
and all they're dealing with is, but the, like you said, like this is the introduction of art and learning,
Mm-hmm.
and like there's one of the little girls who's talking about, she wants to go to school but she can't, so she
Mm-hmm.
values this project so much because it is her chance to learn something new. And it's you were saying about, you know the camera is good enough. The pictures that these kids are taking, it's just like, there's, I'm looking at this, and there's something I say quite often here on the show and just in general, is that emotional content outweighs technical perfection.
Yeah.
And looking at their photos and just going like, and some of them are just like amazing. There's a photo of like the waving grass in there that I just look at. I'm like, this is, man, I wish I could, like, this is, it's like I'm jealous of that photo, and just like,
Yeah.
and but there's also these photos of people that, while they're not technically perfect, you're hearing the
Mm.
kids talking about like, oh, I really want to have this, like how they view the photo itself as a memory, or they're taking the
Mm-hmm.
photos of the grave. and
Hmm.
like hoping that you can have this image of, you know, people will, there's it's just the importance, the value of a photo as it goes through, like to remember things and to connect you to a time in your life. Just I found that as a photographer and as a human being, I was really connected to that. That really resonated with me so much, and just sort of the, like you said, the child like view of a new art
Hmm.
form, and it made me kind of go, man, I get into my head way too much.
Yeah. It's interesting, Casey. When I originally stumbled across the organization's Instagram, I had that exact same response that you had. I had one of those moments where, I think we all kind of have that where we stumble across something on Instagram on our phones, and then we kind of lose all sense of time. And you look up and it's half an hour later and
Mm.
you've been sort of absorbed in this, for better or worse, I suppose. But I also found the photos to be sort of so vibrant and alive and full of emotion and motion and like there was a rawness to them. It's always difficult, in my opinion, to talk about fine art or photography. I feel like words quite fall quite short, but I had that exact same experience. And my one of the motivators for making the film, it was this recognition that like these kids stuff is so good that I just want to try to create a structure to center it. And so both in the production, but I would say especially in the edit, it was a lot of how do we take our voice, our shooting out of it and try to insert more of the children's both analog scanned images, and also the kids were filming with little point and shoot digital cameras video as well. So it's sort of a montage of, you have the kids photos, their videos, and our stuff as well. But throughout the whole post-production process, it was like, how can we remove ourselves as as a professional documentary
Right.
crew and try to center that much more kind of raw, unperfect, but much more intimate and, to me, much more interesting material.
Well, you did a wonderful job, because there's just you really, I mean, in the statement you put out about the movie is about like, oh, we wanted to center this around the kids. It's just you're
Mm,
immediately immersed with them and their experience, and just like, I felt, and I'm feeling like I'm getting emotional, but that's the reason I watched it twice, was because I felt the first time I watched it, I got very emotional watching it, and the second time it happened again, and I was just like, I was
mm,
trying to be a little bit more detached the second time around, and I couldn't do it. Like, it just, like, it gets so drawn into, because like you said, they're telling their stories and their parts of it, and it's like there are, I don't know, we get so attached to things, and like we're talking again, I keep coming back to like you said about gear, like we get attached to stuff,
mm,
and these kids don't have a lot of stuff for various reasons, whether they're refugees, whether it's because of the earthquake, all the
mm,
things that are going on in their life, and just how much they just love what they are able to do, like how much they
mm,
get, like they get the enjoyment. And I think that the you can call it a childlike, I think, but the term childlike wonder sense, it sometimes has a negative connotation, because it just feel like that when you call it something childlike. But like, personally, I was so envious of these, in a way, of just the point of view of just being so open, and not like, over time I feel like people get emotionally connected to all the things that they're doing, and they shut themselves off, they build little walls, they build their
mm,
boxes that they put things into. And sometimes, for me as a professional photographer, one of the things I really try to do is to have projects that are outside of my work when it comes to photography, to have things that are separate from, like, this is a paying job, because otherwise photography always feels like work.
yeah.
So in watching these kids, there was such a freedom and joy in what they were doing, that I was instantly envious of as a jaded uh,
Yeah.
old like person who's been
Well,
doing
me,
this
me,
for.
me too. Me too. I mean, I think that, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that and for watching the film twice. And I'm so glad that it resonated with you in that way. I think that your experience watching it was my experience making it in many senses. I have a bunch of nieces and nephews, and I've kind of been around kids that age for a while over the last decade. And I had sort of had this thing lodged in my mind, like the way that they process the world from the kind of age of 3 or 4 to 10 or 11 before they kind of hit the teenage self-conscious years is really amazing. And it's sort of really cuts through. There's this poet, David White, who talks about how, I think that I'm going to butcher the quote, but he basically says poetry is language for which you have no defenses. And I think that the kind of thinking or ramblings of children of that age would fall into the same category. That when you hear them processing or working out something, there is a way that it resonates with you that if anybody else would say it, it would sound cliche or trite or overdone. And so to me, the other part of the film that I found really interesting, even before we, started working on it, was I knew that there were going to be children of this age, and kids are kids. It's a universal thing, regardless of language or circumstance. And I had this feeling that they might be engaging in a way that I knew my nieces and nephews would engage with that kind of stuff. And it's universal. And I think that's what I wanted to really lean into, to not sort of other it or exotify it, but just to make it a film about kids engaging with photography, and bringing that life and joy and curiosity that, us being in the industry for a couple
Yeah,
decades, it's hard for us to reconnect to.
yeah, it feels
Yeah.
very at times it feels very distant when you've been at it for a long time, like that sort of that viewpoint on the art like feels very. And at one point, one of the kids like, "You can't take a bad photo," and it's just like I'm like, "What?" Like there's, I'm
Yeah.
so judgmental of my own work at times. I'm like, it's just like, man, I wish I could get back to a point of
Yeah.
get back there and just like feel free to take photos like that. And I think that it's not just the photography, like it works on, there are so many levels here that these kids are processing trauma as well as like learning this new art. And it's just like, and watching those things sort of like coincide with one another is also super emotionally powerful.
Hmm.
And seeing them like the joy that they still have for this art form that they are learning is refreshing. It just sort of feels like if you can be dealing with this, and you see them like processing their emotions about these
Hmm.
horrible things that are going on in their lives, but they're still like, hey, I've got this thing that in my life, like this art, and it really is. You feel the importance of it to them, but also just like the joy and the freedom they get from it that is super powerful and just makes me want to be like, like, what do I have to complain about?
Hmm.
Sort of in a way.
One of the things that I would highlight in that I also found quite powerful was the ability of many of these kids to sort of move between the light and the dark,
Mm,
quite fluidly. There didn't seem to be any resentment or hanging on to a certain emotional state. We didn't know what we were, as an outside crew, sort of going to find. I think that a lot of times as a documentary filmmaker, especially doing kind of indie work where you're going and finding a story, you do as many pre-pro calls and pre-screening interviews and beat sheets and mood boards and all that stuff as you can, but ultimately you just kind of get on a plane with your crew and hope that you're chasing something worth chasing. And one of the things that was really profound to us early on in the film was these children's ability to, on the one hand, as you had highlighted, Yusuf was one of the young boys who had been displaced by the earthquake was taking a picture, a family portrait, because he had lost his family portrait in the quake. And there was this ability to sort of deal with pretty heavy themes and then immediately kind of switch and say, "Well, but look at how there was a scene that we ended up getting cut because there was a lot of these kinds of moments." But he's telling us this really difficult story, and then I see as we're interviewing him, his eyes kind of wander up over my head, and his eyes float there above my head, and I look, he goes, "Look at how the sun is reflecting on that cloud." And it's this
Yeah.
ability to kind of go from light to dark very quickly. And I think that the photography, I mean, not that the photography brought that out of them. I think that's what most kids do naturally, which is a lovely sort of state to be in, kind of a Buddhist way of non-attachment. But through photography, we really got to explore that, which I think was a lovely kind of, I would say, surprise for us, because we didn't know, we didn't know if we were going to come and make quite a somber film.
Yeah.
That would have been an option as well. We were very open, and we didn't, especially with dealing with issues of trauma. We had pretty strict standards on reporting, to not ask the kids directly about the trauma. If they would bring it up, we wouldn't pry and ask more questions that could potentially re-traumatize them. And so it was interesting to kind of have this real mix of stuff that would come, but most of it, I would say, if you watch the film, it's quite an uplifting and joyous film.
I agree.
And the challenge, in a sense, and our editor was fantastic in this, sort of, how do you build a film that has to contain all of that? There's a lot of kids in the film, there's a lot of different themes, there are a lot of offshoots, there are a lot of kind of hot takes that these kids have, and it would have been a lot easier to just be like, well, what's our thesis? What's the linear progression? But I really wanted to kind of figure out how to build something that felt like it was in conversation with all of these things that are happening, because that's life, right?
Yeah.
We're recording this podcast. We all have things that we're super excited for and beauty around us, and then some very difficult stuff that we carry around with us. And I think that those kids, in a way, did that in such an exemplary way. It was quite profound to me to be able to experience that.
Profound is, yeah, you definitely, like, yeah, and the things, the one child at the camera, if it was Yusuf as well, who was talking about the dog, taking pictures of the dog.
Ilie, yeah, Ilie.
And it was like, as a many-time dog owner, like the heartstrings just went like
that one got you.
Yeah, to be able to both be in, like you were saying, a very Buddhist mentality of like being able to be in the I'm enjoying this moment with the dog, but also understanding that the dog may not be there, will not be there forever, and just like but at the same time, like celebrating. But I also want to document this moment so that I have it for later. I was just like, it's something so beautiful about the human condition, and being able to just like how they're able to express it, I think, in a way that adults have trouble, because again, I think that we put up our barriers as we get older, like you said, and getting into teenagers, we start becoming self-conscious, or just the way that we get sort of stuck in a rut of how we, I don't know, see the world, experience things. It becomes very easy as you get older to go to the path of least resistance, and these kids, and the way that they speak about the art, the photos, life, they just have a way of like you said, like floating between light and dark. I think it's just it is the stream of consciousness make seem like, as a description, people will be like, oh, well, they're just like talking, but it is if you ever meditate and are mindful, like these kids are truly mindful. They like the thing comes in, they recognize the thought,
truly present,
express the thought, move on to the next thought. There's no, it doesn't come across as performative in any way. It is really how they are experiencing the world.
Yeah.
And I found that quite moving. and powerful, and made me just want to. I I'm going to say this again and again during this conversation, but like people should watch this. Like photographers should watch this. Definitely, artists should watch this.
Mhm.
People in general should watch this. It's just like whew, yeah, I just keep thinking back, and I think it's there's a lot of powerful messages in here for people.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad it resonated with you. I think for myself as well, I had been in this place where I was had worked, I do a mix of corporate commercial work, documentary work, and photojournalism. I sort of and photojournalism actually come has come a lot later in my career. I think most folks that are working in film and video often they started in photography. My course was a little bit different, and actually started shooting photos about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's more of a new addition to me. But I was a little bit suppose burnt out, or just not feeling very inspired in the state that I was before we started doing the film. And I always have found that when I'm kind of burnt out, I don't need a vacation. I need to work on something that refills the tank. It's not a detachment from the craft. It's kind of going deeper and finding something that reminds me why I like to do this kind of work. And it's hard to raise money. It's hard to build teams. It's hard to get these things off the ground. So you don't have the opportunity to do one every 6 months, in a sense, right? Every couple of years usually is kind of been my pace of churning out a film. Um, and remember thinking before this thing, you always have this moment of fear, like, oh shit, is this going to be is this going to turn into something? Like, is my instinct correct that this is interesting? Because you can really quickly start to doubt yourself. And I remember the day before we flew out, my apartment is full of gear and Pelican cases, and we're packing everything up and we're double checking paperwork. And I kind of had this feeling like, well, I hope that this is going to turn into something, because I just felt very disoriented by what I was chasing for a moment there. And then when we got on the ground and started filming, it was very much what you said, which it was sort of a reminder of how to. I mean, it's not just that the film was working out in the
Hmm.
sense of what we got, but it was also just a personal lesson to me as a creative person of how to go about this craft. How to go about it just for the sake of doing the thing, and not to have a whole bunch of expectations and a whole bunch of overthinking involved in it. And I've found that whenever I can remind myself of that approach, to not overthink, to just go and do it and to find out what will happen at the other end of that, I tend to make good stuff. It's always the overthinking that kind of gets in my way. But it was a sort of a process that completely re-energized me in my career. I was very much kind of on my on my last leg, as far as making indie docs goes, because it's just tough and it's hard to find funding and all that kind of stuff. And so it was, to me, really kind of a kick in the butt
Yeah.
to keep going. And I now have a bunch of other stuff in production and feel quite kind of re-energized, just by having the opportunity to experience these kids. And it was also a project, and I'm sure you've had those in your past as well, where you start to work on something and you start to work on it kind of alone, and then it kind of gains a momentum of its own, a sort of creative momentum of its own. And the people that came out of the woodwork are such fantastic creatives in their own right: colorists, composers, producers, editors, consultants. It was just the caliber of folks. I was really floored by the people that ended up working on this film. I mean, to me, I was so proud of kind of the work that we did, because it felt like, I don't know, just sort of, sometimes there's our projects that just kind of come alive and begin to, I think, have a momentum outside of yourself. And I remember really pushing things and things falling apart and trying to raise money and all this stuff early on. And then something clicked, and it was just, I was like hanging on for the ride, and things were just happening and people were coming on board and people were, coming up with great ideas. And I felt very much like, the person trying to steer the ship, but I wasn't pushing it anymore. It just kind of had its own momentum. So it was a lovely, lovely project to be a part of. And yeah.
I think that that's sort of like when the project sort of takes a life of its own,
Hmm.
and in like you said, you're sort of guiding things. You're no longer like you're not in control, but you have a little bit of
Yeah.
of you can steer it as much as you can. I think that I mean, from my perspective as a consumer, viewer, whatever you want to call but the felt that you discussed this earlier, but like you could choose to go in a totally different direction with this and make it either very somber or like tell a completely different story. But I feel like the what you highlighted is that not controlling it, and that sort of freedom but comes through in the story of these kids. It just that it doesn't feel. I mean, again, constricted by
Mm,
like the outside. Like it's something Serbest says to them in the almost the very beginning of the film. It's like there are no bad pictures.
mhm,
Don't like don't think of the rules. Don't think of like there. And it's something that when people ask me how to take better photos and like oh I feel stuck or I feel like I'm in a rut whatever, and it's just like you learn rules so that you can break them and like and know how to break them or whatever. But there's also part of me that like listen to that and go like, "Wow, why do I care? Why do I even care about that? Why don't I just like take photos?" And there's again like these shots of people that they're taking that are overexposed or whatever, and you're sitting looking
yeah,
there going, but at the same time I'm
yeah,
like, I feel so connected to this photo. And
yeah,
it's just like I don't know these people personally, I don't know who they are in relation to someone in the documentary, but I feel so connected to this image. And that is says something about the power of photography. And I just think that you're seeing you've chosen to shine a light on in both the power of art, because I feel like it's not
mhm,
necessarily limited to
mhm,
photography is the only way, or video, or painting or writing. It is the power of art that it has over people, and why we choose to pursue art as a
mhm,
something that human beings care about and makes us feel more connected to each other and the universe at large. Um, I think that is what you struck upon very
mhm.
well, and I think that's why you felt revived creatively by it. I feel like inspired creatively by it, and just wanting to go out and take pictures in a way that I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but there are times when I just feel like I don't want to do
Yeah,
it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But then I'm like, you know what? They're like, after the first watch through, I was walking with my dog, and I just stopped a couple of times because I had that same sort of feeling. I'm like, oh, that's really like that branch against the blue sky, and the flowers like starting to bloom on it. That's really beautiful. I just took my phone out, took some photos, which
yeah.
I normally almost never do.
Oh, really?
I just like it'll have something will really have to strike me. I was just like I had opened myself up
Yeah,
to like doing it, and it really just I started to feel like because I'm very I don't know, like there's just part of me like I will take like snapshots and things like that, but this was
yeah,
very much like a oh I'm gonna frame this
yeah,
nicely, like this is a really you know beautiful, like I had to look up to see it too, like it wasn't it's in front of my face. It was like I was open myself to look around and see things, and usually unless I like put myself in that headspace of like okay now I'm taking pictures. uh
I do the same thing. I kind of turn on when I'm working, and then turn it off. And I'm not somebody who always has a camera photographing. I will notice images as I'm walking around, in New York. I'll be like, "Oh, that's a great shot. That's a great
yeah.
shot." But I will never take it, and I feel a little bit guilty for not taking those images
Yeah.
because it feels like work to me. And I think that I immediately get sounds like you get the same way, like a little bit cerebral, and you start to overthink things. And I also know that if I'm shooting a street scene, I want 20 shots of the thing to give myself some options, see if I got it, and that's just kind of how I work. I tend to not have a whole bunch of kind of confidence yet in my voice as a photographer. I think I'm I'm a fine photojournalist, and I've gone out and shot for a bunch of, the big newspapers and whatnot, and I get the story, but uh, it always feels like a challenge. And yeah, it's nice to sort of be reminded that there's this other whole part of it. When we first got that camera in our hands, we probably didn't think about all this stuff. And does the image that we captured now, is it so much better than the one that we would have taken as a kid? Who knows? It's different,
Yeah.
and how do we uh, take that body of experience and take that understanding of craft, but also try to reconnect with, I think, some of that like aliveness and rawness and spontaneity. And to be honest, like that's the stuff that people are commissioning now. That's the stuff that's moving people, because the practice of photography has been so polished and so we're so saturated with technically perfect images all the time. I find that the stuff, just like when I saw Serbest Instagram, like the stuff that stands out to me, and I hate to say this, but like stops the scroll, is stuff that is really raw like that and really untraditional. I don't know the last time that I stopped at like a high-end Calvin Klein shoot, and I really
You're
was
like,
in awe of the
yeah.
technical prowess, because it's all there. Everybody is so good, and there's so much good stuff out there. And I'm not poo-pooing any of it. There's a place for all of that. But I do think that as consumers of photography, we have matured in a way that now we're looking for something that moves us a little bit more. And that thing that moves us tends to not be technical excellence. It tends to be something kind of ineffable about the image.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a photographer friend of mine who's also been a guest on the show, Johnny Edward. He does these very amazing, like creative portraits and fashion stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first came across his work, I was like, the ones that I talked to him, I said, the photos that really like get me there are these out of focus images that you take. That like there's a lot of movement and whatever, which are completely feel like it is. There's just a bunch of more visceral feeling to them. The
Mm-hmm.
portraits are very beautiful, like the very posed still portraits are gorgeous and creatively amazing. I said, but there's something about these that like really resonates with me. And he goes, oh yeah, those are the photos at the end of the shoot when I'm just like playing with my subject and we're doing stuff and we're really like there's a lot of interaction in like I was like I want to do both. I want to get this
Mm-hmm.
this side of it, but I also want to have these very like playful images where we do things that maybe it doesn't come out technically perfect. And I'm like, yeah, there's the same thing. It stops the scroll. It stops it stops me in my tracks. There were times when I just like paused the film to like look at the
Mm-hmm.
photos. And there's also this is something that I get into a lot when I talk to people about who are feeling stuck in photography, because I learned photography on a film camera is to like limit yourself to the number of exposures you're going to take and say
Yep.
like, oh, it's going to be 10 or 12 or 24 or 36 images, and that's it. You only get that many exposures. It's not like the final number of photos, because like with a digital camera or a phone, whatever, you can just like take photos, take photos, and take photos. And you're
Yep.
not as, I don't know, intentional or thoughtful. And like watching those kids in the film, like you said, he's taking I've got one photo left on my
Yeah.
roll, and I'm going to take this family portrait with it because I want to have that. And it's just sort of like, like that sort of like thoughtfulness and um, the connection and intention in a way. Like I don't want to put too many labels on kids who are just being like this very, but it's like just sort of a
Mm-hmm.
natural intentionality to it
Yep.
that a lot of people who get into this and have been doing it for a while don't have. Like it feels like you know, I feel like you and I are on the same wavelength a lot of this, but it is something we seem to beat out of ourselves at times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like instead of letting it, uh, sometimes you feel like you chase the style that's like people react to because you want like to make sure that they're getting like the people who are viewing it are connect to it because that's how they're going to connect to it, instead of doing this is how I saw it, this is I'm just like going to put my
Yep.
own thing out there, the visceral, you know rough around the edges emotional thing as opposed to the technically perfect.
I think one of the things that just to touch on one of the things that you said really resonates with me, and it was expressed in our making of the film, but also in all my work, both photo and cinema, which is that when you begin to play or just kind of mess around, that's when the interesting stuff happens. And I think, if when I go out and shoot a story for the Times or whoever, there is a quite a lot of pressure because you have a commissioning editor that trusts you and you don't want to fuck it up and you want to get the story properly. And always the first half day or depending because of the first beginning of the project is like getting my safety shots and getting enough so I know they can come back and sequence something and it's passable. And this moment also generally corresponds with some degree of increased trust with the subjects. Usually towards the end, I will start kind of goofing around, like messing around. Um, and that's not to say I'm not taking the story seriously, because I generally cover pretty somber topics. But there is this kind of like, what if I tried this? What if I tried this? And you're just kind of noodling around and you're chipping away and you're trying different things. And I have to say, across the board, those are the images that I generally love. And I've had great editors that have always like allowed me to have my say, and they tend to like those ones as well. And even, when making cinema, when doing documentaries, I always find that the crew for the first period of time in the beginning, you're kind of trying to find your footing. Everything, I always feel like I figure out how I want to shoot something by the time the shoot is over. Like the last day, I'll be like, I know what I want to do, and like we're getting on a plane to go back home. But I do think that after the like settling down of all your team and sort of figuring out, every workflow is a little different, every team dynamic is a little different, every subject that you have to cover is different. Like how are you gonna? You just can't think through when you're in New York, for example, what the physicality of running around and chasing 15 kids through the fields with you're not really sure what to expect, which is the amazing thing about documentary film. It's that kind of excitement. You're chasing an adventure in that way. And I've always found, it's always like after the long day and we got the things that we need, I always go, you know what? And I'll come up with some idea like, maybe, do you want to go photograph in that field? And I'll run around and do something really kinetic and very handheld, and I'll let it be really loose as I'm holding the camera. And that's the stuff when I come back and post, I go, fuck, that's good. Like, that's what I want to lean into. Can I swear? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, you're
I've been
fine.
swearing. Okay. And I've always found that like, it's that, we talked about the kids' connection to the work and sort of the spontaneity. For me, it tends to be like, get the safety stuff and then allow those like little ideas, those little instincts. But it often interestingly happens after a very long day of work and often after many, many days on the job where you're quite underslept. And I think that it's what starts to happen is the thinking part of your brain goes a little bit more docile and your instinct starts kicking and you're just sort of reacting to the images that you see. And that's when the great stuff happens. And I think that's also what folks are reacting to in this film, because they see the kids being so connected to an image without a whole set of references and overthinking. The image that you highlighted was the image of wheat fields.
Yeah.
Turkey grows a lot of wheat. One of these earthquake relief camps was abutted by two huge wheat fields, and so the kids would go and play in the fields. And taking a picture from that vantage point of wheat fields, I could see both of us probably being like, well, shall I make it more interesting? Shall I put the horizon way up top or way up low? Or maybe I'm having one stalk of wheat really in the foreground out of focus. Like we would do a million things. And this kid's instinct doesn't have that. He sort of just found that image right where it is. And I think that that's what professionals of almost any creative class are looking to get back to, that immediate response to the material without all of the stuff that we've learned.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like, like seeing it with fresh eyes in a way and not, I don't know. This is somebody as someone who my primary business photography is weddings and doing like, in events. And it is one of the things I have very much stressed to myself and to my clients is not going in with a preconceived, like, this is what the photos are going to look like. Like, yes, I
Yeah.
mean, if I've worked in the place before, I'm like, yeah, this is where we should do some portraits, and this is like, these are some great spots for this stuff, but not going in there and going like, I'm gonna get this shot, and this is what it's gonna look like, and there, because I give myself the room to
Hmm.
play, and I think that
Yeah.
that's what helps. I mean, one thing I will say I'm very good at is like, I get images that are unique to my clients because it really
Hmm.
reflects who they are, and their personalities and the personalities of the people who are their friends and their family members, because I allow that to show through and don't put my own like preconceptions on top of it, going like, I have to make this fit into this slot, and it has to
Yeah.
fit this type of thing. um and that becomes its own style in a way, as opposed to like,
Yeah.
like of being just being this very authentic thing, as opposed to, whatever, you know you want to call XYZ label. Um, but yeah, just the being able to see it in that way. And I think that was my favorite image. Honestly, you're talking about from the wheat field, is I think from
Yeah.
all of them was like the one that really got me. And I was just like, man, I could see this hanging somewhere.
Yeah.
It just really, like, that one was the one I was like, oh man. But yeah,
Yeah.
being able to see the world in a, I don't know, again, I keep saying like childlike, but not in a bad way, in a childlike
Hmm.
way.
Yeah.
Do you have your own website? Are you tired of dealing with slow loading pages and poor support from your current web hosting company? Consider switching to SiteGround, the top rated web hosting company that provides 24/7 support and super fast hosting speeds. SiteGround's platform is built on the premium Google Cloud infrastructure, ensuring top reliability, security, and speed for your website. Their fast network and storage provide optimal site speed and a high level of redundancy, so you can trust that your website will be up and running smoothly at all times. With SiteGround's ultra-fast server setup, your pages will load 30% faster on average, giving your visitors a better user experience and improving your website's SEO. And with hosting starting from just $199 per month, it's affordable for any budget. Plus, if you're not completely satisfied, SiteGround offers a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't suffer with a terrible web hosting company any longer. Make the switch to SiteGround and experience top-level support, super fast hosting, and a reliable, secure platform for your website. I spent years with a web hosting company that was absolutely terrible. My site was constantly getting hacked and support was nearly impossible to get a hold of. Since switching to SiteGround, all of those problems are in the past. Just visit nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/SiteGround or click the link in the episode notes to get started and begin enjoying faster, more reliable web hosting today. Hey, photographers. Tired of spending hours culling, editing, and publishing your photos? Narrative does it all for you faster and smarter. With AI photo culling, you can quickly sort through thousands of images to find the best shots. With AI editing, you can customize edits to match your personal style effortlessly. And with publishing made simple, you can share stunning blogs with ease. Save time, stay creative, and let narrative handle the heavy lifting. When you use the link in the episode notes to try narrative, you get 10% off and an additional 200 credits for edits. What are you waiting for? Try narrative today. Visit the link in the episode notes and get started for free.
Hey, hey, hey! And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. Ugh, this is always death.
All right, it's time for our useless information. Ilya, true or false? Brutus slept with the mother of Julius Caesar.
True.
False. It
Ah.
was the other way around. Brutus's mother was one of Caesar's mistresses.
I
So
don't
no
know. I don't
wonder
know drama well
the
enough. Yeah.
stabby et tu
Starts to
brute.
make sense.
Yeah, he's like, hey, come on, that's my mom. Yeah, there's no wonder I'm going to take you to Stabby Town. Ilya, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Where can people find the film, uh, find you, and how can they contribute to this Serbest, the photographer who like runs this project, how can they help out that project if they would like to?
Yeah, absolutely. Serbest has, since the filming of our film, started a new photo program that is doing very similar work. So, if the film resonates with any of your listeners, I would really encourage them to check out his new program, which is called Fotohane, Fotohane. And if you're able to give a couple bucks, the website, and he just sort of launched his program, so I know that he is looking for support. It is fotohane.org, fotohane.org. You can find the film both on my website, which is just iliemitaru.com, ILIEMITARU.com. Or if you type in First Frames and We Present, it should be the first thing that pops up there.
I'm going to include all the links in the episode notes as well so that people can find them.
Great.
Ilie, again, listeners, go out and watch this movie. If you, like I said, if you're a photographer, if you're an artist, if you're just a human being, it's gonna. I think there's things for everybody to find in this film that are really powerful and uplifting, and not in a saccharine or overly sweet way. It's not. Look at this! Look at how wonderful this is. It is just naturally there. I think that's why it resonated so much with me. Again, Ilie, thank you for being on the show.
It's such a pleasure. I'm so happy that it really resonated with you, and thank you for giving me the time to chat about it.
Of course, and you're welcome back anytime.
All right, have a good day.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ilie Mitaru. You can find Ilie on Instagram at Ilie Mitaru. That link, as well as a link to watch the film First Frames and a link to contribute to Serbest's cause, are all in the episode notes. I highly recommend checking out the film. It's less than a half an hour and very, very powerful. While you're clicking on links and lending your support, be sure to subscribe to this show and follow along with the Nerdy Photographer on the social medias at The Nerdy Photo. That's at The Nerdy Photo on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Reddit. You don't want to miss out. There's lots of discussions and things going on that happen between episodes that you definitely don't want to miss out on. Well, let me take a look. That's exactly the same photo I took an hour ago. Okay, folks, I need to get focused on getting their creative juices flowing. Until next time, stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.